Welcome to another Wildlife Sounds from the Forest. And we have Dr. Matt Springer with us, and you have some interesting sounds for us today.
Yeah, good morning, Renee. I've got a few that, as we enter winter here, they're going to be more common if you're outside, especially at night. However, some of these you may even hear during the day at this point in time.
Okay,
So,
let's take a listen.
all right. So, start this off. That one's pretty straightforward. I bet you a lot of people have heard it, and most probably know what they are.
Right, exactly.
It's that saying, who cooks for you? Who cooks for you all, right?
Right.
So, and it is our barred owl. They're
Most
very,
people knows that sound.
yes, most people do. They're a very pretty bird. They're one of our larger owls, not our largest owl, but one of our larger owls, and really common in both urban and rural forested settings.
Okay. All right.
So we're going to keep with a theme here.
Okay.
Right? So our next one.
Now, is that two different birds?
It's two different sounds, right? One is a much more common one that everyone hears, the hoo hoo, right?
Right, that I understood.
But then you got a little angry outburst in there, probably because somebody
anger.
was harassing them at some level, and that is, our larger owl, our great horned owl, clearly identifiable from the tufts above the ears there, and once again, common in both, fairly common in both urban and rural settings. I had one that would hang outside my tree in Lexington, and I still hear them, out in rural parts of the state as well.
Oh, okay.
And our last bird for today, because we're kind of doing these in sets of three, following that Christmas theme of the goose and everything else.
Right. I know it's an owl because you said so, but I would not have guessed that was an owl.
Well, they make a couple other noises. This one's the song trill that you would probably hear now, and I have been hearing it. It's definitely not living up to its name, and they are a tiny bird. If you can actually see it here in this picture, it blends in quite well.
Oh yeah, there it is.
It's our eastern screech owl, and this one is the gray phase. They have a tawnyish color phase as well, they're a very tiny bird, and are probably our smallest owl that we have in the state. If we don't have any lost saw-whet owls come through, but once again, common in urban and rural settings, very much tied to trees, and I believe we have one that's been frequenting the arboretum, if not more than one. That I see pictures of regularly on social media.
Yeah, he blends in very well. It took me a minute to even find him.
Yeah, if he was the red phase, he would not have blended in as well with that whitish color, silver bark.
Right, definitely.
So, yeah, now these guys are all very important in terms of ecological services. They eat a lot of rodents. And the great horned owl and sometimes the barred owl can get themselves in a little bit of trouble sometimes with things like chickens or ducks for poultry. For those folks that have either backyard flocks or on a larger scale, even they get into the poultry houses.
So what are their chicks called? I guess they're not called chicks, but
no, they're not called chicks. And this one's pretty easy. It's an owlet. And,
that's easy.
And the real reason why you're hearing a lot of them right now is, and probably why you asked that, is actually we're getting closer to breeding season. These guys are one of the first birds, like eagles and hawks. They start their nest pretty darn early in the spring, even really late winter. So you may come across, especially in conifers where they're possibly nesting, you'll see especially barred owls will be around, and all of a sudden you'll hear, you may see them staring at you for some reason, and it's probably because there's a nest nearby.
Right. So. Yeah. So how many owlets do they have?
Well, that depends. The screech owl, it can have up to 6 eggs in a nest. The barred owl upwards of 5, and the great horned upwards of 4. But most of the time you probably see 2 or 3. The screech owl you might see 4 or 5. I've heard of folks seeing as many as 6 at one time, but usually it's I hear about 4 or 5 the most. It probably depends on the health of the parents and how much food they have, that, how many owlets are going to be able to make it longer into their lives. And, it really kind of depends on
And,
what's going on in that system. Yep.
mhm. And do most of them nest in trees like that one you showed us, or do they have nests that they build?
So the barred owl and great horned owl will actually have stick nests. Screech owls will use cavities if they can't, or they'll actually are frequently found in wood duck boxes. But they will also, I don't know if they're solely a cavity nester off the top of my head. I couldn't tell you. But I know that when we would check wood duck boxes, we'd find them quite a bit. And, in the spring, sometimes you'd see a nest in it. It was not the most fun thing well, it was really cool to open, but also not fun because all of a sudden you have owlets that are not very happy you were there.
Not where you were expecting to be in the box.
No, not at all.
All right. Well, anything else you want to give us about owls?
No, I mean, they're quite amazing creatures with some really cool adaptations with, such as their feathers that allow them to have silent flight. And remember that if you're using any kind of rodenticides, that if there's owls around, they're going to be directly impacted by that. So make sure you follow the recommendations and use them inside to help eliminate any possible exposure for these guys, because they do end up accumulating quite a bit of anticoagulants in them and they die from it. So it's one of the reasons barn owls have actually been collapsing population wise. So just make sure you wisely use those rodenticides so that we can keep these guys around, because they really do help us quite a bit with rodent population control.
One thing I just thought of is that's always amazed me is how they can turn their neck. It
Yeah,
looks like they go all the way around.
Almost completely around that. Yeah, it's in essence, if they can't make it all the way around one way, they can turn it the other way, and they have complete 360-degree vision with that ability. And they have the larger eyes and the offset ears to help them find prey. There's so many cool adaptations,
Right,
for sure.
definitely. Well, thank you for coming in and talking about owls.
Great to be here. Thanks, Reneé.